Welcome to Turning the Tide. This is Candace Salima coming at you from the heart of the Rocky Mountains. And today we are very privileged to have an Emmy-award-winning musician, composer, Kurt Bestor, visiting with us. And Kurt, I don't know if you know much about Turning the Tide, but the whole show is about focusing on the things in America that turn the tide towards morning in America again. Just basically reminding people that there's great hope in America, that there's lots of good things and lots of good things to fight for. So I appreciate you taking the time. I'm going to read your bio really fast, and then we'll get into the heart of the interview, okay?
Great. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for being here. All right. Kurt Bestor is an Emmy award-winning composer who for over 30 years has composed an incredible variety of music in a myriad of styles and genres. From over 40 feature-length films, 16 popular CDs, numerous television themes, and a mix of live shows, he has established himself as one of America's most prolific and versatile composers. As a gifted performer, Bestor has performed his popular holiday shows for over 24 years to sold-out audiences throughout the United States. People from Seattle to Dallas have enjoyed his easygoing manner and rapport with the audience. Bestor has also performed internationally, conducting and performing with the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra and Choir, the Estonian National Orchestra, among others. Kurt, welcome to Turning the Tide.
Thank you. It's nice to be here, as always, Candace.
Yeah, it's really fun because, I've interviewed you a couple times. You've interviewed me, and so it's kind of a fun thing to have an old friend on the show.
Yeah, no, it's always nice to be interviewed by somebody you actually know. So thank you. And it is a crazy time, but it's nice to relax for a moment and just talk about me.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I know you've got your fabulous Christmas concerts that are beginning what day? Tomorrow?
Today is the 7th, and tomorrow. Absolutely. I remember it this year because Pearl Harbor Day is today, and I start the day after. So December 8th, 9th, and 10th in Salt Lake City, and I go to St. George, I believe, on the 20th of December and do a couple of solo piano concerts. And then, believe it or not, I actually have concerts on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and people go, what in the world are you doing that for? But I'm doing them in Park City, and people up there come to go skiing, and they don't really have there's not really a church service or a musical service they can go to. So my solo piano concert up at the Egyptian will function for people who want to have a little slice of Christmas on their vacation.
Oh, how wonderful. I love Christmas. It's my favorite time of year, Kurt, and because you're from Utah, here in Utah, Christmas is not Christmas without a Kurt Bestor concert.
Well, I appreciate that. There's a lot of things for people to choose from. For those that are listening outside the state, if you ever want to have a great Christmas and can't make it to Victorian England or something, come out here because you've got so many things to choose from. And not just music, things like the Nutcracker. There are places to go visit, seeing the lights on Temple Square. I'm just grateful to be a part of the Christmas tapestry.
Oh, it's wonderful, and you're right. I have to echo about Utah at Christmas time. It is a stunning state with the majesty of the snow-covered Rocky Mountains, as the background. And as you said, Temple Square and concerts and ballets and plays and the lights at Thanksgiving Point, and people here really get into Christmas with the decoration and coordinating it with the radio stations so that when people drive by, if they have the right radio station on, the lights will tell a story along with the song. And I love that about Utah. And you are an integral part of Christmas here. So I know you're crazy busy, so let's get into the interview real quick. I have several questions. So first, tell us about the Kurt Bestor Christmas concerts that are coming up, as you mentioned. And people, you can go to kurtbestor.com to get all the information and the dates. So don't worry if we don't give you the exact information. You can find it there. Okay, tell us about the concert that starts tomorrow.
Well, the concert, every year I try to do something different. I can't just repeat the same old thing. So this year I've invited two special guests. The first is a 36, I was going to say voice. They're not really voices, but a 36-person handbell choir, the Wesley Bell Ringers. They're considered one of the best in the western United States, and they're from right here in Utah. So I've got them performing with me on 4 numbers. And then my very special guest Many of your listeners who were around in the 70s and 80s will remember Melissa Manchester. And
oh, my goodness.
Yeah, she is my special guest this year. For those that don't know, it sounds like Candace does, but for those that don't know who she is, you might know she's a Grammy Award winner. She wrote the theme from Ice Castles and sang that. She's a twice nominated Oscar songwriter. People might know Coming from the Rain, Midnight Blue. Anyway, really, truly a legend of music, pop music in America. So she's going to be
a stunning voice.
Guest. Yeah, she's got a great voice, and I haven't met her yet. I've only talked to her on the phone, but in listening to the songs that I'm arranging for her, 2 of them are original Christmas songs that she's written, and the last one is a piece by Nat King Cole. But in listening to her voice, it's an incredibly low and lusty kind of voice, but she has such passion and such feeling in her. I think it's going to be a real highlight of the show.
Oh, well, I don't know. It sounds to me like the show's going to be fabulous beginning to end, as usual.
We also have, I've got my band, which is about a 6-piece band, and a 30-piece orchestra that join me. So it's kind of a cast of thousands, and we'll get together tomorrow for the first time, believe it or not, in the afternoon, rehearse everything, and then at 7:30 at night tomorrow, we'll let it rip.
Oh, wow, you're brave. One rehearsal? Is that what you just said?
Well, you know, to be honest, it's just a matter of economics. It's very expensive to hire these musicians, to hire the hall, the sound equipment. If you do that just for rehearsal, you can't pay your bills when you're done. So through technology, by using MP3s and sending PDFs to the musicians, talking with them via Skype, they've had a chance to rehearse on their own. So they won't be coming in totally fresh.
Oh, good. Well, for everyone who hasn't been to a Kurt Bestor Christmas concert yet, it is professional and stunning beginning to end. It is something that you will want to get your family to. Perfect date night. It's just great to kick off the Christmas season with one of Kurt's concerts. Now, Melissa Manchester, I haven't heard what she's been up to, so that's quite a coup to get her.
It wasn't really easy. I had to go through quite a few layers, but she still sings and tours. People remember her from the old songs, but she's done new ones, and she is going to be singing some songs off of an album she did called Joy, which is a Christmas CD, and it really is a wonderful CD. So people will be able to buy her CDs at my concert, and I've been doing this for 24 years, and over the last 20 years, I've always had a special guest. And I've had people like Jennifer Warnes, Richard Elliott, a sax player, Jenny Oaks Baker, who people know around here, especially as a violinist. She's amazing.
Yes.
But I think this year we've kind of hit a new high with Melissa, and I'm looking forward to meeting her.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Okay, so everyone go to kurtbestor.com. His first Christmas concert kicks off tomorrow night, December 8th. Now, Kurt, I was doing a little bit of research on you and found that you are the National Advisor for Ascend, a humanitarian alliance. Can you share with us what that foundation is about?
Well, that's a group of people headed by a friend of mine, Carolyn Daly, and a few others, that they take people to third world countries, and these people pay their own way to go. A lot of time it's family groups, and they'll go over and do projects, ongoing projects that Ascend has going, digging wells, doing education, medical sort of things. And it's a really kind of I like the organization because it helps both the giver and the taker. And in fact, it's kind of hard to know who's giving who what. If a group goes to Kenya, for example, they're working on helping the Kenyan people, but imagine your family who has not known the kind of poverty that you find in a place like Kenya, suddenly being able to help these people in a way that is sustaining. It's not just a handout. It's not just throwing out food, but helping these people to develop their own talents and abilities. Sometimes I think the Americans that go over and do that through Ascend are benefited greater almost than the people that receive it. So that's why I'm a part of that. My wife happens to be from Kenya, and so we have a particularly nice connection there. But I am involved with Ascend happily, in helping them out when I can.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful organization. And, to echo what you said, any time that you serve others, I really do believe the one giving the service benefits far more than anyone in that arrangement, always.
Well, we live in a society, at least we should anyway, where no man is an island, and we all need other people's help. Sometimes we think that, well, we've got money and so we don't need anybody's help. But we live where we have to communally work together, and but we need to extend that to other countries besides our own. And there's needs here, there's needs there. Wherever people are in need, there are, thank goodness, groups like Ascend that help them out.
Without question. Well, that is a wonderful organization to be a part of, Kurt. I'm glad that you're doing that, and it was really fun for me as I was doing the research to see that you were, because I know you're a crazy busy guy. So as a musician, you have been performing, composing for as long as I can remember, and that is not a reference to either one of our ages, by the way.
Well, I know I'm older than you are, and it's almost longer than I can remember. So, yeah, it's been a lifelong interest of mine, and the fact that it's a job is kind of coincidental. I would do music even if I couldn't make a living at it, but thank goodness I do.
Well, yes, you do. What I wanted to ask is, at what point in your life did it really coalesce in your mind that music is what you wanted to dedicate your life to?
I can't even really remember the time period. I mean, when you're a little kid, you don't really think like that. I mean, you don't really plan on, you don't think that this is what this is my passion. You just know, you live in the moment, and you know that I love doing music. And if I ran by a piano, I'd always have to stop and play it. I like to sit down and write music when I was a kid. So for me, it was just a day-to-day thing I enjoyed doing and was passionate about. Later on, when I was in high school and I had to start thinking about what are you going to be when you grow up, I still was a little hesitant to say I want to do music as a living, because a lot of times society doesn't look favorably, at least in America, for people making a living in music. I mean, we're all grateful for everybody that's a musician that does CDs and so forth, because everybody listens to music. But if your son comes up and says, "Hey, Mom, I want to be a musician," unfortunately, it's not something that parents try to go, "Oh, well, maybe you could just do it as a hobby and then go out and become an accountant." I never got that from my parents. And so when I decided in junior in high school that I was going to write music for films, my parents just, helped me to realize that by supporting me. They never let me have a job. And I know this will kind of go counter to maybe a lot of people. My parents said, "Look, you got plenty of time in your life to make money. Right now is the time for you to develop your talents and abilities. So we will pay for your proms and we'll pay for that stuff. You don't need to buy a car. You don't need to have a stereo. You can listen to ours. We want you to practice the piano, develop, be on stage." And I have to say that their method was very effective for me. And I'm grateful for that.
Well, certainly you must have, because at the level of skill you have as a musician and a composer, which I'm not fawning over you when I say it is exemplary. It is extremely high, the level of talent that you have. And so I'm certain your parents recognized that very early on.
And my dad, Candace, was athletic coach. And so you combine that, the drive of a coach saying, he was telling me, and I remember this distinctly, if you're going to do something, do it well, or don't do it at all. Be the best. There's always room at the top. Some of these kind of coachy type of idioms that he would use for his football and swimmers, he used on me. And so I to this day, I have a hard time doing something just halfway. It bothers me, and that's to my dad's credit.
Do you know, and I am the same way. My husband, I don't know, actually just earlier this year, someone asked me to help put an event together, and like you, I don't do anything halfway, and I did what I always do, which was do my best to put together an astounding event. And my husband said to me, he said, "Honey, you've got to stop saying yes to all these things, because you don't do it like everybody else. You throw your all into it." And so when you say that is how your father raised you, for me it was my mother who raised me the exact same way. And that is what produces the best of the best. It's what allows people like me to go to a concert like yours, Kurt, and just sit there and enjoy as beautiful music just falls over you.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. I have to say that I think sometimes we spend so much time focusing, especially in our American, capitalistic kind of country, which is great and we love it, but we always think that making money and going to school so that you can get a job, getting a job so you can buy this for your family and do all that. We put a lot of emphasis on that when in reality, one of the things that makes us human is the humanities. And sometimes, you don't make a lot of money in the humanities, but when you think about it, I don't want to get too philosophical, but
it's okay.
If we spend all of our time just making money and just achieving those type of things, we're really no different than animals lower on the food chain. That's what most animal life does. They go out and try to find food and find a place to live, and that's basically the day-to-day life of an animal below our species. But man has the ability to create things, to create art, to uplift people, to do things that are not necessarily necessary to our staying alive, but they're necessary for feeding our soul. And yet we don't always value that. We value it when we go to a concert, but we don't always value it in terms of the kind of support as a community. And I'm not asking for, handouts or anything. I'm just saying that it's an interesting kind of conundrum and one that I think we have to check once in a while. So when a young kid wants to do ballet or do poetry or write long stories or be a graphic artist, those things really are noble things. And I'm grateful again to my parents who recognize that in me. And I do make a living at it, but that's not the focus. The focus is when I am in a Bravenel Hall starting tomorrow and the audience is there, I want them to go away feeling just a little bit better because of it. There's lots of wonderful feelings and things that'll be better for our souls. So anyway, long story, a little bit longer. Just, so once in a while we have to check that, make sure that we put value on those things that make us human.
Absolutely. Kurt, as you know, I'm well entrenched in the fight for America right now to make sure that all the beauty and wonder of America stays alive. Yeah. And I interviewed Sean Barrows the other day, actually yesterday. You guys' show is going up this afternoon, and so I listened to him talk about music programs in the schools and how the funding has been cut, and he has a huge 50-state concert tour that he works with the high schools and the colleges, and he just raises money for their humanities, for their music programs. And we talked about how kids involved in music are better mathematicians, are better scientists, are better at reasoning and common sense, because music not only feeds the soul, fills the soul, it actually helps with the brain and the development of the ability to look at problems and effectively disseminate what the problem is and what the solution is. And people often don't tie that to music.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And music is that technical, and I've been told this by scientists, and I don't always believe them because I'm not a great mathematician, but they say that people who do music are using kind of a high level of visceral math. In other words, when a person is singing or composing or playing the piano, their brain has to jump between both hemispheres very quickly. And that is a very high level of mathematical function of the brain. It makes for an interesting discussion just on that sometime. But I think sometimes it's a chicken and the egg thing, though. Is it because people are playing music that they become that way, or is that they're that way so they go into music? I think it's a bit of both. But I do know that anybody that goes into music, even if you don't think of it this way like we're talking about, but you think of it as just the discipline for a child to sit down at the piano, and they don't get any immediate reward. We live in a world that's full of immediate rewards, but kid sits at the piano and he practices for half an hour a day. The reward might come years later. I mean, that's talk about a slow reward, but it's something that is really crucial for kids to be able to say, I've got a goal that I'm going to play the piano. It's going to take me 5 years to be able to really play, maybe 10 years to be better, 20 years to be really good. That's a wonderful discipline that is sorely needed.
Oh, I agree. And I with my busy, crazy life, with my sweet husband and his illness, and then everything I do with the show and so on and so forth, I'm going to tell you that on Saturday mornings I go down to my sister's studio, and she, has a group called Twist and Shout, and it's all different classes, ages, from like 3, 4, and 5 to me, because I'm the oldest, and I get to spend 1 hour every Saturday morning just immersed in music, in song, dance, and laughter. And it feeds my soul just as much as going to church on Sunday. It gives me the ability, or when I feel at the end of a day like my mind and my spirit are just about to explode because everything is too much, I sit down and I put on music. Now, obviously, at a moment like that, it's not the heavy driving music. It's more like yours, which is so beautiful and just speaks to the soul in such a way as to soothe it and make it calmer. And I don't know what I would do without music. I think you're very right, Kurt, that we have to remind people in the world today that the humanities are what keep the spirit and the soul alive.
Well, the Greeks knew that, and back in the day when the ancient Greeks, who were known for their academia, they included not only music but theater and the arts, humanities, as part of their educational system. And oftentimes I hear people, when they talk about education, they always use the term reading, writing, arithmetic. We got to focus on that. Science. We got to focus on those things. And I agree. However, we tend to diminish music. I'll speak of music because that's my world, and put it in a place like, oh, wasn't that sweet? So and so sings in the choir or sings and plays in the band. And that's nice. They have that nice little class. They totally miss the point of what makes us human and what makes us well-rounded. My mom was a school teacher in the Alpine School District, and well known throughout her career, got many awards. And she often told me, she said, look, education is, when you go to school, you're not going to school so that you can get a job. We talked about this earlier. But you go to school to love to learn. And I have to say, to this day, I have all the latest gadgets and iPhones and everything, and I'm constantly looking up words. Oh, what was that word that person just used? I look it up, I find the definition, and that love of learning is what makes me be a composer. It makes me love traveling. It makes me want to perform. If it's just to get a check to pay the bills, how boring is that?
Well, yeah. I can't imagine a life without music, Kurt.
Well, I don't think you ever will. And I'm not saying that as a musician. I think that music is really, truly a part of all of us. If you go back to kind of our lizard brains, you discover that man has always expressed joy in a way that comes out as music. It may not have been exactly like what we think of it as, but it's just natural. And that's why it resonates with us. We've now put it into kind of a form where we buy it and we go to a concert. But, throughout history, there's always been people singing while they work and while they're doing the laundry. They're listening to other people tell stories with music. They're dancing to it. It will always be around. I'm just saying, I don't always want the common man to determine what our art is. In other words, if left to just a monetary system where the free market dictates what music is, it might be Lady Gaga all the time. And, I actually kind of like some of her stuff, but if pop music and music that makes money is determined as the only thing based on a free market approach, then where does our classical music go? Where does music that is sacred and uplifts us go? Where do we get all that stuff that doesn't necessarily make money? It's an interesting topic.
It really is, and we certainly don't have time for it today because I think you and I could probably go on forever on that.
Oh, and we would,
but,
yes.
yes, we would. And there's always going to be a place. There's always going to be a need for the classical. There's always going to be a need for the type of music that you compose and perform. And as an example, you won an Emmy And why don't you tell us what you won that Emmy for?
Well, I won the Emmy for writing the music for the broadcast of the Winter Olympics in Calgary way back in '88.
Yeah.
And I was a part of the ABC News team, working with a friend, someone I think you know as well, Sam Carden. And we were assigned to write the music for that broadcast. It was a crazy, crazy time. We sat at our little computers and pianos all day long, writing music that would go with the broadcast that night on TV. But it was rewarded with the Emmy, and that was nice to have been able to do that.
Yes, and people love movies, and they love plays and musicals and all this kind of thing, and the kind of music that creates scores is your kind of music, Kurt.
Well, it seems that way. I've been told sometimes my music sounds like film scores looking for a film. And
I can see that.
Well, and it's probably because I'm not a composer that can write. I can't just write notes. I can't sit down and go, let me just write some pretty notes. Notes have to convey some kind of emotion, and emotions are typically drawn from experiences, from things I've seen, from things I've felt. And so normally I kind of envision in my mind some kind of small little mini movie, and then I proceed to score it. So that's probably why people, when they hear it, they see things or they feel things that are kind of cinematic.
Well, that sounds about right. Kurt, we need to take a quick break. How much more time can you give us?
I'm fine for a little while. Another 15 minutes I could go. That's
perfect.
One sentence for me, but.
Well, then my last question will be our last 15 minutes then.
Right.
All right. We'll take about a 2.5-minute break. You can get up, stretch your legs, and we will be right back on Turning the Tide with Kurt Bestor.